What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about this GTA 6 PS4 problem. It was actually a pretty interesting read from Game Industry Biz, and just looking at the Twitter post, I actually read the entire thing, and we'll talk about that, but just reading this, GTA 6 and the PS4 problem. With 50% of Sony's audience still playing on last-gen hardware, can Rockstar's next opus convince fans to put down their DualShock for a DualSense? And now if you go into the article, it's honestly a pretty interesting read, and it connected to me in a couple of different ways. You know, I've talked long on this channel about when do people move on, right? When do you kind of pull the plug on last-gen support? You know, I've talked about those kind of issues since the PS5 came out and Xbox Series S and X, right? What's that sweet spot? So they basically say in this article that, well, number one, like, there is still a player base. And I think I maybe even saw somewhere else that there's a considerable, like a substantial amount of PS4 players. I think they said that it makes up the majority of GTA Online, GTA 5 Online players is actually from the PS4, which is an interesting one. I mean, PS4, a very high-selling console, one of the higher-selling consoles, you know, kind of all time. I guess that makes sense that they would maybe be stuck there, but I never really thought of that, right? And, you know, the article kind of goes into the habits of people, right? That, you know, slowly over time, people are jumping onto the next gen, and, you know, we still got another year or so until GTA 6 that'll, you know, encourage more people to jump in. PS5 and Xbox Series S and X doing the 0.5, right, like the mid-gen refresh, that'll also help. But at the end of the day, you know, again, are players going to jump over? And again, this is kind of right up my alley where it's like, you've got to be aware of that stuff, right? And that's what makes the early parts of generations tough, because you release a game like Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, right? And you release that 6 months in, you're dealing with a substantially lower, you know, player base. It's just what you're doing. You have to kind of make sacrifices in the short term where it's like you're trying to get people to move forward, even though the vast, and at that point, it's probably like 90-10, 95-5, right? They're playing on PS4, not on PS5. So it's always something to keep in mind, but, you know, I'm one that always talks about, I never like to leave the past behind. In fact, I have a whole retrospective channel, and I love talking about old games. I love playing old games. I'm not saying to murder those. I hate that the 360 marketplace is gone, but when you're introducing new technology, you got to give people reason to get that new technology. And in a way, you do have to kind of pull the plug on support of the older stuff to funnel people in if you want the ecosystem to continue. If the whole point is to upgrade to newer and newer generations, and you will not leave the past as the past, and you're not giving people incentive to move forward, why are you introducing new hardware, and why should we get it? And that's the biggest thing to me. Why should we buy it if it's going to take so long to get into the next console generation? It's something I've talked, you know, a lot about. When it comes to GTA, does GTA have a PS4 problem? I honestly will say no. And it goes back to, you know, what we kind of talked about a few days ago with my other GTA videos. Maybe I'm putting too much stock in it. And, you know, I'm sure we're going to have the debate as we get closer and closer if the expectations are too high. And, you know, when the game comes out, we'll be able to judge, right, if we were thinking, you know, too highly on it or whatever. Regardless of any of that, though, everything I said about kind of the mentality that I think people have about GTA 6, I think is true. I think the general sentiment is that GTA 6 is going to be enormous. I truly believe you're going to see like widespread people calling off of jobs, and it's a worldwide event. It's going to make history. It's going to make the most money in 24 hours of any media franchise, more than Avengers, more than music, more than games, more than movies, more than anything. I think it's going to do all of that. Now, it might be overhyped, you could say. I've seen people in the comments, right? It might not. But ultimately, that's kind of separate, because you could overhype it, but I don't think the people that are going to buy it, I don't think I'm overhyping that. I think the game is going to sell unbelievable numbers. But, well, one thing we've kind of talked about when we say those things, but I guess not really, right? It's only on the current gen. It's only going to be on, you know, PS5 and Xbox Series S and X. We'll see how good it runs on the S. And also, the PC version comes later, right? I mean, this is the Rockstar kind of formula. You have it be on the consoles. It'll come to PC like a year or so after. You'll have GTA Online again. And I really think for a game as big as this, it kind of does transcend that kind of issue. Like, if you introduce like a Fortnite 2, I think you would have a problem. But because Fortnite's so big, do you? a Rocket League, some of the bigger games, right? You might be worried that you're splitting the audience, and splitting the audience does happen. It absolutely does happen. But for the bigger games, I myself have less of a worry about it. And so when you move to GTA, I just feel the allure of getting GTA 6, right? Just the fact that, oh my God, it's coming out. And say, like, PlayStation, right? Because it's the PlayStation problem, we're calling it. I think that's enough to get PS4 players to get PS5. Like I said, actually, in the beginning, you need these things. These things are almost necessary or required to get the average general gamer to upgrade. They are probably the hardest to upgrade. The diehards, we move with the technology. We move where the games are. We find a way to make it work, right? Someone like me, of course, I was going to get a PS5 and Xbox that day or within a year or whatever. I was going to be there. But an average Joe who gets 2 games a year versus me that gets like 35, it's different. You need a game as huge, again, hype aside, you need a game as big as GTA to convince the average person where it's like, hey, maybe they only play GTA, Call of Duty, maybe they get the big exclusive of the year for Xbox or PlayStation, and that's it, right? They get 2, 3, 4 games a year, and they get the big ones. Well, you need one of those big ones to abandon the past and embrace the future. And that's what GTA is going to do. So truly, I do not think it's going to be that big of an issue. I think this will be the final thing. 5 years, 6 years even, depending on when it comes out, right? It might come out 5 years after PS5 and Series S and X launched. That's closer to the PS6 and the next Xbox than it was to the last gen. It's closer to next gen than it is to the last gen, which is nuts, right? We're all getting very, very old. But it's time to upgrade. It's time to move forward. And I'm not demanding it of people, but you need these kind of games to give them that extra push. And this is exactly that kind of game. I would say Hogwarts Legacy, even though Hogwarts also came out, on last gen, Hogwarts was a game where maybe general Harry Potter fans that had a PS2 and played freaking Chamber of Secrets, right? They upgraded 2 gens. They maybe didn't even have the PS3 360. They upgraded to PS4, Xbox One just to get Hogwarts Legacy. Only certain games can do. Now, GTA is on a completely different level, but Hogwarts was pretty freaking big and did that to people. GTA is on a whole nother stratosphere. So, again, to keep saying it, I really don't think it's going to have that issue. I think, maybe GTA Online is when things are going to get kind of tricky, but I think the adoption rate of people moving with the game, I think it's overall going to be fine. GTA Online is going to split it, right? Because then you do have a new online experience where it's you might prefer the old one. You might be used to the old one versus the new one. And their goal is to get people to move forward, right? But ultimately, you will have people, you look back at, you look at games, right? And people can look at the PC charts, right? On Steam. When a game comes out and the multiplayer is not doing good or the game's not doing good, you see people actually revert back to old. When Suicide Squad came out, not necessarily, all multiplayer like we would say for GTA Online, but when Suicide Squad came out, you actually had more people playing Arkham Knight that you could see on Steam versus Suicide Squad. And it could have been the same thing on console. You don't really know, right? That kind of stuff does happen. People revert. People, kind of backtrack to what they're familiar with or maybe what they think is better. That might be a bigger issue. But the point is, and I think the point of the article, right, is you're trying to get people to jump to the PS5 and Series S and X. And will GTA have a problem with that? And maybe GTA Online, obviously, entangled in that. I think because GTA Online is afterwards, I feel like you might have less of a problem, right? Because you're getting it at launch for the single player, for the base game. And everybody's going to do that. And then the multiplayer, it's kind of that extra layer. It comes later. You can technically, for the first year or so, still have people that are playing GTA 5 online or GTA Online, through that. But they also bought GTA 6. They have a PS5. They have a Series S and X, right? And then you have GTA Online that comes 2.0 that comes out a year later, and then they either adopt it or they don't. But I think this is going to be the game that gets people to move forward. I mean, if this game can't do it, I don't know what game what game would do it at that point, right? So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.